So welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we are taking a look, finally, at Dien Bien Phu, The Final Gamble, 2nd edition from Legion Wargames.
We've heard a lot about this game over the years.
This is like one of those war games that people have been talking to us about since day dot of us doing war games.
Yeah.
It has a very good reputation. It's, people
For good reason.
Yes, people said, oh, it's so interesting. There's all this cool supply stuff.
Yep.
It's very asymmetric in what it's doing, but it's really, really, really cool and very interesting. So this is a 2-player hex encounter war game about the siege of Dien Bien Phu, which is part of the French-Indochina War, I think at the time is what it was called. So it's 1954, French Indochina, what will become Vietnam. And so you have all these French troops and French kind of allies. And they're
from Thailand and trying to remember where the other ones were from.
All sorts
Singapore,
of
maybe,
places all over. And they're basically stuck up in this airstrip. And they got a ton of artillery, and they were being surrounded by the Viet Minh at the time and thought, wow, we've got superior firepower with all our sweet artillery. We'll hold out and relief will come, no big deal. But then, so you have these Viet Minh pieces around the outside, and they're, digging their trenches and siege tunnels, getting in there and, assaulting in and out of strong points, and supply and different types of supply are massive factors, especially for the French in this game. Mm-hmm. So before we go any further, you made the comment, this would be a great game to solo as well.
Yes, no doubt.
There's no hidden information in this. You would just do the best you can with each side. There's no reason you couldn't do that.
And I think why I feel that way, we'll talk about it a little bit later on, but this is an extremely long game.
Yes.
Very, very involved and crunchy, to the point where every attack you do, some calculations and then you do a roll.
Which has some of the calculations.
Which then adds a modifier to your next calculations and your roll. So it's like everything from artillery strikes to assaults and then defensive fire. I mean, it's
and various levels of support and cohesion.
So because of all that, it just takes forever.
Yes.
To do, each round we were doing somewhere between 5 and 6 kind of attacks, give or take.
Yeah, I was probably doing 4 and you were probably doing 3.
Yeah, so 5 to 6, and we have played 2 full turns, and we've been playing for
a long time.
6 hours.
Yeah, and
and we're learning the game. So, and we're also doing our thing where we chat and trying to understand and discuss and.
But I think because of the level of crunch within the extreme amount of layers that are in this game, if you can boil it down to an hour a turn, you're probably at a good pace. That's a 21-hour game. It's 21
because there's
turns,
20 if it goes to the end, and it's probably not going to go all the way to the end.
But it has to go to the end for the French to win.
For the French to win, yeah.
So, if you're calling it for a French win before time's up, it's because the Viet Minh have done catastrophically badly.
Yeah.
And you kind of could be able to see that, but even then the Viet Minh would want to eke it out because the stuff gets real hairy for the French in that last monsoon 7 turns.
Yeah.
So you almost would never concede as the Viet Minh because you're probably still more in it than you might have been in other games. So it's going to be a long one.
But because of that, because of the involved nature, because of the length of the game and each turn, this would be perfect for solo.
Yeah.
It really would.
You would have a great time just setting up, doing some here and there over the course of a month. You have a wonderful time.
You would spend a couple hours a day maybe doing a turn, and then you'd come back, I'll do one tomorrow. And before you know it, a week and a half's gone, and you're 3/4 of the way through the game, and you can either call it or continue playing it.
It's still as great as a 2-player game. I had a blast.
Oh, no doubt,
But some of these games we play, it's like, there's lots of hidden information, or there's stuff that would be less satisfying in a solo play. This one, it would be just as good solo.
Yeah.
So the gameplay in this one, like I said, it's a lot of layers. It has one of the most detailed and kind of regimented sequences of play for a single mapper that I've ever seen. I think the only other one
It is very detailed.
that comes close to this, but I don't think it's as bad, is Silver Bayonet. That had a very structured sequence of play.
Similar style of things too.
With lots of different kind of sub-phases and different things like that. This one is more complex than that. But just know that that's what kind of a game this is. Everything you do in this is involved. Like the simplest thing that you can possibly do in this game is movement. You spend 5 little movement points, and there's a little terrain effects chart about how much movement is. But there's so many different phases in which you can move, and each of those phases regulates movement and what you can and how far you can move differently.
Yep.
So even movement over the course of a turn is complex.
Yep.
Then you get into like we talked about, like bombardments. I'm going to do my bombardments. That has a set of rules. It has a set of rules for where you can place bombardments, how much ammo they take, which is a different amount of ammo than it will during the defensive bombardment phase later on. Then you've got to like resolve the bombardment for step losses, and then you resolve the bombardment for shaken markers as well. That's one bombardment done.
Yeah.
I've got 7 more to do.
Yeah.
Then you go into my like tack moves. Then I decide which assaults I want to do. Then you're doing defensive bombardments. Then you're doing defensive fire.
Yeah.
Then I'm doing my assaults. And like an assault has like, you're rolling dice to see how good your modifier is compared to your strength. Then then that gives you a modifier based on a chart. Then you take that modifier for the assault results, add that modifier to that die on a different CRT.
Yeah.
And the CRTs have like all sorts of different like types of attacks and shifts left and right, if they might be shaken or not, or if you have artillery or not.
Yeah.
So like everything has lots of steps and is complex. So
And it doesn't feel like it's overly involved. I feel like it's kind of an important part of each of the steps. Although we talked about this, could you just amalgamate it down into one thing? Yes. But
just know it's one of those kinds of games, right? We play some games where it's like move and attack, and it's real simple.
Yeah, this is not that.
Everything you do in this one is involved. That means there's a lot of decision space. So like, it is very important, like how you line up your units that are of the same formation, or bringing guys into stacks that like are gonna try to add modifiers, or not having artillery defending on their own. Don't do that.
Yeah.
So, and then it's like, cool, trying to avoid what are called obstacles, I think, which are different for each side. Like, I'm desperately trying to cut your wires, and you're trying to not attack across rivers and into forests. Although if you're attacking into forests, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah, if the French were going into those forests, because there's only forest here, and
I think really that it's for the last box,
here.
But we didn't get there.
Yeah.
But that's there's lots to consider in every sub-phase because there's rules for everything all the time. So just know that this isn't a game that you're going to kind of set up and,
breeze through.
Yeah, it's not. But we've done it a couple turns, and some of the stuff I already feel like, okay, I know what I should be doing there. I think after you've played this, 1 or 2 times all the way through, you probably have a lot of that kind of down pat.
Yeah.
And you will breeze through it a bit quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, and once again, that granularity is not a bad thing.
No, that's the feature of the game, really.
It just makes it a longer game. There's nothing... I did like what you said as the cardinal sin of wargame design,
Okay.
and we're not experts.
No.
But I thought your point was very, very valid.
Yeah, but I don't know when the original of this game was designed, because this is the 2nd edition from Legion Wargames. But there are some things in game design that I don't like, and this commits a lot of those. I still liked this game though.
Yeah, yeah.
But in those, the cardinal sin for me is when you have like a real mix of resolution of the same mechanics. So in this game, you add modifiers that you then add to your strength, and you roll 2d6 to try and roll under that. Okay. In my opinion, that's how everything should be resolved.
Right.
So you have a unified
Add it
mechanic
up,
through
roll
everything.
under.
But what you do is you take that positive or negative, you add it to a d6 that you're then trying to roll high on
Yeah.
on a CRT.
Yeah.
That's not great. Because it just makes it that much more of like, okay, which roll am I making? And like,
Yeah.
And there's a number of different instances in this, like with artillery, you take a bunch of negative modifiers, but you're trying to roll a target number that's a fixed target number. You try to roll a 5 or more. Doesn't matter what it is. And that will give a step loss. But then you look at the shaken result, where you add all those modifiers to that exact same die result, and you're comparing it to the morale value on the counter.
Yeah.
So instead of it being a fixed target number and a fixed target number, it's both.
Yeah.
Within the same mechanic resolution, which is...
It just gets your mind thinking in different ways.
And you have to switch between
And you have to
those
think differently.
all the time. And
Yeah.
so that's...
It's different than asymmetry, right? Because
Yeah.
we play asymmetric games, but it's about the vehicle that you're using to get the game. High versus low. It should all kind of be low and all low, or
Yeah.
all high and all high.
Or all
you know.
fixed target numbers, or all
Right.
what's on the counter, and not both all the time.
Sure.
So that's something that I do find frustrating in games. This had a lot of that. However, because of what we were doing was so cool and interesting,
Didn't bother.
it bothered me, but I was able to work through it. There are other games where, if it had been at this level, I would have stopped playing.
Got it.
But this one, what we were doing was so cool.
Yeah.
From the strategic standpoint overall, with all the different supplies and the trench zones and digging and moving forwards, to the real granularity of the tactical stuff, was fascinating. It was very cool. Trying to surround guys, and the rules about getting guys isolated for long enough where they'll take attrition, or you get to break out and then zoom everyone across the board.
Yeah.
And then you get into the whole French supply stuff, which is its own mini game.
Yep.
And that was one of the things that was kind of most touted about this game. They're like, it's a great war game, but the supply mini game is where it's at.
Yeah. And it was very, very cool.
Yeah, it was really neat to see what it actually
Yeah.
was.
As the French trying to understand, okay, what do I really need versus what am I likely to get because of the way the weather table works. The worse the weather is, the more planes don't take off, so you don't get as much supply. But it's about deciding, and there are four different, actually 5 if you include reinforcements, but it's medicine, ammunition, food, and bullets. And ammo is like artillery ammo, shells, food and bullets, and then fuel and spare parts for your trucks. And it's like you've got to make decisions about what you need to get over. Food is very important because the food pieces only give you 1, right? So if you line the entire, and you don't even have that much fuel, you're only going to get 8 or 9 if you get every one of them through. The ammo, it's 2 per counter, and you're placing them on this grid and then rolling a black 6-sider and a white 6-sider. The black is the column, and the white is the row.
Other way around.
Row and column. And it's like, oh, I lose that, so you lose that.
Yeah, but that's based on that weather roll you said.
Yes.
So like if you roll really well on the weather roll, all your planes will get through. Woo, very unlikely.
A 2 to a 4.
Yeah.
So that's not going to happen.
Whereas
very often.
almost always you set up all the stuff that you want.
Yep.
And then you sit there and you roll, and it just it's
evaporates.
Like going through a sieve, and it's fun to see that you don't have a lot of control over it.
No.
And so then it's like you get what you get.
Yep.
And
it's about, I find the very interesting part about that game, that part of the game, is assessing the situation and what you really need based on what you've got and what you want to use this turn. And then understanding, like I tried to get some medicine the first couple of turns because I felt like I was going to start losing guys. Now I misunderstood that, or I wouldn't have put 2 medicines, but I got a ton of medicine now. So I'm going to be able to bring on some reinforcements from the dead pool. It's not the dead pool, but it's like the wounded pool But what I really needed to focus on was food and ammunition. And those were the things that I'm starting to get low on, even after just 2 turns. And it's a little scary. Now that I've learned that, I would have done things differently the first turn. But that's a cool, because it gives me decisions. What do I really need, and what can I not live without? Because ultimately, the thing you can't live without, you've got to fill it up as much as you can.
And what's also fun, and this is just like a stupid game thing, because it's columns and rows with 2d6, it's effectively like you're rolling a d66. So it's not like anything is more or less likely to get removed. You can't plan for it. But I'm always going to put my good stuff in the boxcars box.
How long do you roll 12?
Because it feels like I won't roll that as often, but you will, because there's no distribution. It's an even distribution, right?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Be like, I put my stuff in the 1/1 box because I'm not going to roll snake eyes as much. You will, because it's not how the dice roll works.
But I did like the part that, and they called it. What's that word? Aborts.
Aborts, yeah.
They called it aborts. And when you're rolling those dice, if you roll the same number in a spot where you have already lost, you just don't lose anything else. I think that's the way it works.
Yeah, because and that's important, because with the columns, it's a 1 or a 2, or it's a 3 or a 4.
Yeah,
those are doubled up, so it's more likely you're going to roll the white.
And I always feel like the middle column, kind of along the same lines as your thought of boxcars or snake eyes. I always feel like the green column is the one that's going to hit more often, and it's just not.
And statistically, that's not how.
Because I think I put the stuff that I felt like, oh, okay, I can lose this, and I didn't. I lost the other stuff. But that was a very cool part of the game, because once again, it's about deciding how to load your planes based on what you need and what you need the most of.
Yeah.
But it's still random.
And then you get your stuff, and you're like, okay, I don't have much ammo.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do a fewer bombards than I was doing. Or I've got a ton of medicine. Ooh, I can recover some guys. Or I can, I don't have to do as much medicine next time, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's also...
But it's an ebb and flow of the battle itself, right? The more guys you lose and are losing, the more medicine you're going to need. And the closer the Viet Minh get, you need more artillery, because you gotta do those shots.
Well, and the other thing is once all your stuff starts running out, you're like real screwed.
Yeah.
Because
you're gonna start turning guys over.
Yeah, you start taking losses. It's real bad. So you have to be very careful. The longer the game goes on, the worse that stuff gets.
Well, and it's funny,
you just melt.
Because only after 2 turns, I'm already starting to feel the pinch.
Yeah.
After 2 turns.
Of a 21 turn game.
Up to 21 turns. So very cool part of the game. That's not typically in war games or included in war games.
Not
enjoyed
in this way. And that was the thing, because people who talked about this game, they always mentioned the supply.
Yeah.
And they were like, the supply minigame is awesome.
Yep.
And once I read the rules and seen you play this out, I was like, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, there was a fun little
side
it's
show.
a fun little sideshow.
Yep.
But the effects in the
important.
game are so significant that it's like, yeah, that's awesome.
And you, as the Viet Minh, also had some things like that. Not quite. You're managing your ammunition for your artillery strikes.
Yeah.
You're managing your morale.
Yeah, the Viet Minh morale game is fascinating because I don't have fixed morale on my counters. My morale are on tracks, where it's like the entire, I think they're divisions is what they called them, has the morale, all the same morale based on where it is on this track, anywhere from like 5 to 2. And your morale only goes down when you spend replacement points to fix guys.
Yep.
As the green dudes come in, they don't got the same morale because they've been sat in the back, I don't know, doing nothing. And so the more damage you take, it's fine. But once you bring the replacements in, then the morale goes down. So then I'm inclined to rest them, where I don't do anything with them.
And that's as the French, that's what I wanted to see. Like you were talking over, you're like, I'm going to rest. And I'm like, oh, thank heavens, because that gives me a turn to shift my guys downward and get some better defense in here, because I'm in trouble right now. I just don't have very good defenses here.
Yeah, and I think that's also one thing I really like about this, is that it forced the Viet Minh to change the point of attack. And I do feel like in a lot of siege games like this, you exploit the weak part and you go, and you'll break the enemy. But in this, you cannot do that.
Yeah.
Because you'll just destroy your divisions and you'll never be able to recover their morale. So
Yeah.
I do a bit over here, then I do a bit over here, and those guys have been resting. Now they're good to go. I go back and do a bit over here, and I do a bit over there.
Yeah.
You know, I've still got 21 turns to make it happen, but that flip-flopping gives reprieve to the French, but also feels more realistic of the kinds of stuff that would happen.
You can't balls to the wall, fight it out all day long.
Yeah,
right? I mean, you've got to have a break occasionally.
And I think that a lot of games ignore that.
Yeah.
Like if I think about something like a SCS game, you just go as hard as you can.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Whereas
all the time.
Whereas and like I don't care about losses. That's so unrealistic. It's
Yeah.
fun for a war game, but this one forces you to be concerned about that.
Yep.
And that is a huge merit and a credit to the game.
Yeah.
And it was very enjoyable to play around with.
Well, and I do think Kim did a good job of integrating those elements into this historical situation, from the supply to the morale to the way artillery works. It just all works together well to create this titanic struggle,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not going to say that I know everything historically about this, but I've read a little bit. I think I've watched a couple of shows. We even talked, I think They Were Soldiers once. At the very beginning, they're surrendering.
That opening scene, yeah, it's
So we know about this, and it's just cool to see it play out. One other comment I would have about the ebb and flow, it is so interesting because your gray division is starting to get to the point where they're really worn down.
yes.
Right? And you actually don't have, you have some units you've got to replace.
And I think one of them died as well, so I got to
think
get it back on the board.
two of them died, I think.
Were they grey? I can't remember if those
Yeah,
were
I
grey or
think
the
two
green
died over
ones.
here and two died
Well,
here.
these are green, those are grey. They're different.
Right. But your green is also almost
Yeah.
to that point. So I know you're going to have to fight. And I was thinking, okay, you're not going to attack me next turn. So I need to get a wave down there, get in good position, and then hammer you again to try to get you down to 4. And that's going to ultimately be the important part of that game, because the closer you get, and now your trenches are up to number 2, it's going to get harder and harder to receive supply, harder and harder to fight you off. There's just nowhere to go. And it's just interesting.
Yeah, honestly, as long as the game is, and as complicated as it is, like we pretty much were reading, we played through the rules. The rule book is organized
Needs an index.
pretty decently. It desperately needs an index, and some of the rules aren't great. There is living rules.
Which we didn't download.
No, but because you should be able to play it with the rules out of the box.
Yeah.
But you probably want to do yourself a favor and get the living rules. But as much as we were doing that, I was having a great time.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was interesting. Everything was meaningful.
Yeah. Well, I felt like I was almost hanging on every single die roll.
Yeah, every die fall had jeopardy to it.
Yeah.
On my side as well. I was like,
From when you were assaulting me, when I'm doing my defensive fire, flip the tables when I'm assaulting you and you're doing your defensive fire. You threw so many shells at me every turn. And I was reading something historically over the, 63 days of the siege?
Something like
They
that.
shot like 5,000 shells. That's a lot. And it felt like that.
Yeah.
I literally felt like I was getting pounded. And I couldn't quite keep up. I couldn't quite have that much
yeah, well, or if you
firepower.
match it, it runs out.
Very
you
quick.
You burn real quick.
I started with 49 and I'm now down to 28 after just 2 turns. I've used over half,
And which,
not under half, but
no, but like they're like the design notes where it says like playing France, it's like you need to conserve your ammo from the go.
well, and
There's only, but like
I was
only-
really,
yeah.
I was trying desperately just to make it so you couldn't take these areas I was hoping 3 or 4 turns. 2 turns, they're done. I probably could have hung around here one more turn.
But also,
that-
conversely, we learnt a lot that first turn. If I'd have just walked around, that threat would have looked quite different.
Yeah.
Who knows what would have happened.
But very interesting. I enjoyed the heck out of it as well. And we didn't even get into this off-map box part of the game.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that gets released on April 24th,
Which is
where Condor, which is a relieving force, they
turn
kind of march in
15.
here, trying to relieve the Isabel, and then I think they can march down here and then come on the board.
Yeah, the arrows.
But historically, that never made it. Like,
Yeah.
these guys surrendered beforehand.
And actually, looking at it, these are some big stacks, and you've only got 3 units in there.
Yes, but the way that box movement works, right? You
Yeah.
can only move a certain amount of guys, and you have to move X amount into boxed areas versus what I've got. But then I also get these guys released, and they come in here. And
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on in this game, but it was very enjoyable. I will very briefly show you at least a little bit of how this works, but it is very complex, so I'll not walk you through everything, and then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the map, and again, we'll kind of briefly go over as much as we can reasonably go over, but for reference, here's the player aid card, and it is, especially this part of it, is very good. This is the extended game turn sequence, and I'm pretty sure this is also printed on the back of the rulebook, but do I have that handy? Maybe I should check before I misspeak. I'm pretty sure it is, yeah. So the rulebook also has it, so both players can have a copy. One of them's just holding the rules. But this basically, you're going to kind of read the rules once through, and then you can do a pretty good job of playing through from this play aid card. Now, there's a couple times where you'll have to go back and reference everything, but the way that the rulebook is laid out is entirely chronological, basically, starting with 2.1, going all the way to 8.6. So whatever thing you're on, if you need some kind of specifics about that thing, section 4.1, it's all listed in that way. So again, this is a really helpful way to learn a game that, just looking at this, has a lot of steps, is quite procedural. But once you kind of get past this, the order in which things happen is very important from a game standpoint, and it makes the game flow very interesting. I really like this. I do, however, understand that this might be quite, scary or might look a bit dry for everyone else. But basically, you can kind of see from the color shading as well, this kind of brown, red, terracotta color is the Viet Minh, and the blue is the French. So you're going to basically do all of the Viet Minh stuff and all of the French stuff, but nested in the Viet Minh stuff, you have this French kind of reaction phase and defensive fire. Back to Viet Minh stuff, and then a little thing that the French player is going to do, then we're going to check some more on. We're going to go to the French side of things, where they're going to do kind of all their moves and shoots. The Viet Minh defensive fire, back to French stuff, and then a little Viet Minh kind of trench digging segment, and then we're going to end the turn, right? It's really that simple. And I do like the color coding just to kind of get you in the right frame of mind as you're kind of going through this. But that's kind of the flow of the game. But basically, you're going to end up with some Viet Minh operational moves. And so the operational moves are things like moving, it's what's called box move. So you can move between these two off-map boxes, or these ones if kind of the Laos boxes are kind of in the game, or you can transfer out of the boxes onto the map. And again, there's different part numbers that correspond to where you can and can't come in. And then you also get a certain number of kind of generic, you can move 2 or 3 guys on the map as well, just kind of like pre-turn style moves, right? Then you're going to do a bombardment segment, and bombardment is where you're going to, and it's upside down because all the Viet Minh stuff's facing this way on the map. You're going to spend ammunition, and you're going to place out these bombardment markers, the VM artillery markers over in the far corner, and you're literally going to put them out onto these different stacks of French units, or you're going to put them in this supply zone, kind of in central Dien Bien Phu, and you're going to then resolve bombardments. You're going to roll dice, trying to hit certain target numbers to try to add, effectively you're going to add shaken markers, which are over here. You're going to add these little shaken markers, which means they're more susceptible to assault fire, and they're worse in defensive fire. Or you might also inflict step losses, also very good, right? It's a war game. On top of that, depending on how many you put out, you might also then start rolling some dice as you inadvertently or on purpose destroy certain supplies as well. The more you put out, the better your roll is going to be on this supply hit table, which again is printed on the other side of the map. The play aid cards are pretty good, but some of them don't have the stuff on it. So, for example, the Viet Minh, it's a combat table. So we've got our defensive fire and our assault fire tables. But things like the supply hits and your bombardment rolls and stuff, not on a play aid. All of that is printed on the map itself, which is fine, but we can't really see it because it's up there. But this is the French bombardment table, for example. And it's got all the details, all the modifiers in there, but the supply hit table is kind of up there. And it tells you you're going to roll some dice, you're going to score some hits, and you might kind of destroy some French food and bullets. You might destroy some trucks, or some fuel, or some ammunition. But you only get to that point if you put out, I think it's more than 5 markers. And the ones in here count as double. There's some rules to that. But that costs you a lot of your ammunition. So that is a commitment from the Viet Minh to hurt the French. But is it easier for the Viet Minh to recover that ammunition versus the French? Yes, no, maybe. Depends on what time the game is in, right? So really, really important decisions all the way through. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do all of our Viet Minh tactical moves, where you're literally going to spend your movement points, and you're going to move your guys up the board and get into combat positions. You know, standard expending movement points. We're going to move all our guys up here, run, trying to take up all the space. You've got, I think you have 5 movement points. However, you can commit these limited, very limited, is what I would say. Oh, these aren't the right ones. Those are the mortars. You have a very limited number of reconnaissance markers that you can use to get yourself some extra movement points, which might make the difference to kind of charging across some open ground. You're going to move all your guys up, charge them off the mountains, depending. But you might say, okay, this little orange formation of 316th Division, if I don't move any of my guys, if I don't assault with any of my guys, if I do nothing with them, you can rest the division, and what you're going to do when you rest the division is you're going to go up on the morale track. Going up on the morale track is good, going down on the morale track is bad. 316th are already at the top, so they wouldn't need to do that. But for some of these guys down here, you might rest them, switch your focus to this part of the battle, and they're going to not do anything, and they're going to try to recover some morale, which is going to improve their defensive capabilities, and also keep you away from, just collapsing and losing the game. So I like that mechanic because it means that you can't just go all out with one division the whole game. You will go all out with them for maybe a turn or two, then you've got to rest them. Move these guys, then you're going to rest them, switch back to these guys. And over the course of the game, the aggregate of that is very meaningful and it looks really cool. But you're going to move guys, get them into assault positions, charging around. You're trying to take these strong points, these defensive positions, trying to eliminate all of those so that you can converge on Dien Bien Phu itself. So you've scored a bunch of points, removed all the strong points, and then there's this strong points held and strong points taken track. And eventually you're going to get that to a point where if you can get your strong points captured number high and their strong points number low, the differential between those two is going to give you a really good modifier on a kind of surrender roll, and you're going to require the French to surrender. If you mess the roll up, it's not good, but if you pass the roll, they're going to take some losses. Guys are literally going to surrender off the board, and it could be that the French army surrenders in totality and you win the game that way. But if you keep asking for it and they keep shirking it off, basically, with really good rolls, because you haven't taken enough, you haven't done enough to the French, that you get penalized for that. So it's a neat little mechanic that way as well. Once we've kind of moved all our guys up, we're going to then mark everywhere that we're going to be doing our assaults. So we have these little markers that we're going to use. And we're going to put the assault markers out, hey, we're going to try to assault this space here. Here, we'll do it this way. This guy's going to charge up this hill, and he's going to be supported by this guy. It's effectively what we're going to do. And we might say, oh, we'll do a similar type of thing up here. This guy is going to charge up this hill against these two guys. You probably shouldn't do that. But you mark out these, and then what you're going to do is it's going to kind of flip over to the French for their kind of reaction moves. So if they're like, oh, crap, there's an assault coming, they can move defensive guys in if they want. They've got a couple of reaction moves they can do. Then they're going to do defensive barrages. So the Viet Minh's already done a bunch of barrages out here. The French are going to do a few in defense, but again, it costs very, very costly for the French ammo, which over the course of the game is very, very painful to do. And then they're going to do, so you soften them up with your defensive artillery, and then you're going to do defensive fire as the French, where you're going to roll your dice, and you're going to roll on this table. Oh, not that one, that's the Viet Minh one. And you're going to roll a d6. You roll 2d6 against your modified value, which has a bunch of values. That result gives you a modifier, which you then apply to your attack roll, which might have a column modified by if the this one here, if you used a support barrage or not. So it's a lot of gates you have to pass through, and it's like 3 layers of modifiers basically. But eventually you're going to roll a d6, and you're going to then change any one of these things. This is very bad. You don't want to be doing this if you're the Viet Minh. Hopefully you're rolling up here or up here. Oh no, those are worse. Wow, none of those are good. Yeah, you want to have a good... no. Well, effectively what's going to happen though is that you're going to roll, and it's going to change, or it potentially could change, what happens with the assault marker. So, for example, if we rolled on this table and I rolled a 1, instead of doing a regular assault, we're going to change it to a surprise marker. And effectively I rolled really badly, not good. And what a surprise marker is really good for the Viet Minh assault. They surprise you, it's going to be really nasty. You don't want that to happen. You're trying to roll high on this particular roll. You might roll here and you're going to apply a step loss. It's still going to retain that assault marker, but they're going to have a step loss on them. Great. You might take a step loss and you might hesitate, where you're going to get a hesitate marker, which you remove the assault marker and you're going to place a hesitate marker. Hesitate marker is not as good as a regular assault. Or you might get an abort marker. Again, you remove your assault marker and you place an abort marker. Literally, you abort, you don't make the attack, right? So you've committed all this movement and this assault fire and potentially any bombardments from the Viet Minh, and if you can defensively fire to negate that, you can really like stunt them. It's a waste of resources, a waste of time. You're also going to inflict stab losses, but again, it's lots of different modifiers and lots of different target dice rolls, which we kind of talked about isn't my favorite thing in the whole world. But the effects of it are very, very cool. You're going to have done a few of those across the board and resolve all those individually. Once we've done the defensive fire, then we're going to go back to the Viet Minh assault segments, and the Viet Minh on their Viet Minh combat table are going to resolve their assault fire, which again is very similar. So you've got modifiers for having supporting units. If we had our support mortars committed to it, which you might have done, but there's a limit on how many of those you can have per division, which I really like. And then again, you're going to have a modified strength value based on these. You're going to roll 2d6 against that, which is going to give you a final modifier, which you're going to apply to 1d6 based on either the surprise attack, normal attack, or a hesitate attack, which we talked about. And you can see it pushes the dice rolls down, so you unlock this much better row. So if you roll a 6 on a surprise roll, a 6 on a surprise roll is much better with a loss and a retreat than it is with a 6 on a hesitate roll, which only is choice. So again, lots of things to consider, and then the columns also shift based on if the defending unit is shaken, which they would be shaken if our bombardment was successful or not, or if they're not shaken. So you're trying to roll on a low table and you're trying to roll really high. This is the best, this is the worst, which is often kind of the opposite of how a lot of these go. Maybe that's, yeah. So there's a lots of things to consider, and so you want to take your time those first few turns as you do these, because it's kind of easy to mess up and roll on the wrong one, or to miss a modifier, or to have misinterpreted it. So just take your time when you're learning it. There's no rush on this. Think about it that way. Once we've resolved all of those, you're going to do your post-combat moves, where you kind of advance after combat, or you have to kind of regroup, because if you end your turn kind of next to guys, but you're not entrenched, you become shaken, and then it's really easy for them to counterattack you. So you really want to like assault a place, force them out, and take that ground. Otherwise, what you have to do is you move up, you do your little assault. If you don't do enough, you effectively have to pull back. You have to pull back so you're not adjacent to them, and you end up entrenched. And we'll talk about entrenched here in a second, because it is its own little thing. And the same thing goes for the French. They have to kind of do a similar type of thing, where they can kind of move around, or kind of retreat when they need to. But what it means is the game's mechanics build in that hit and run style thing, the waves of attacks. You have to do it instead of moving up, being next to each other, and just rolling the same dice again and again, turn after turn. You actually get the feeling of that move and attack, move and attack, move and attack. And you know, you might just go and do the same one again and again, but you might also move and attack, swing around and attack here, go back here. And you might do those things to try and pry open a defense through maneuver. And I just think that, again, the results of the mechanics that play out on the board ends up giving you a pretty interesting, realistic combat situation that some games don't encourage you to do. You could do, but they don't encourage it. Then we're going to kind of clean up some markers. French units are going to become isolated if you've ended up surrounding them, which you're going to end up doing as much as you can. You're going to check for morale, where you can enforce French surrender if you want to, and then you get some reinforcements. And then we go all the way back to the top, and we basically do it all again in reverse from the French standpoint. But before, kind of, you do your little morale segment, but before the French go, it's kind of confusing. You do this, then you do these, then you do this here. So you're going to do this French supply segment. This half of the table is effectively identical, just reversed, but the supply segment is where the real, like, fun game is. And you're going to kind of have spent a bunch of your supply throughout the course of the game, and then what you're going to do is you're going to load up all of these planes, and you're going to basically see what happens. The turn track, which you can't really see, has dry, rain, and monsoon. If it's raining, this is unavailable to you. If it's monsoon, these are not available to you. But in those first few turns where it's dry, you've got basically these, I'm going to call it like 18 planes, basically. And you have all these different foods and bullets and ammunition and medicine, replacements and fuel and spares. And you're literally going to load up these on all of these planes. Let's get some fuel going. We need lots of ammunition. And some of these will eventually go away. These red ones here can go away if the trench digging gets too much. If you think about it, once the Viet Minh have kind of encroached, they've taken up all this space. The airdrops still come, they just land behind enemy lines, and so it's very likely that these ones here, your capacity to get supply is reduced. Which again, it's really fun to kind of see that and play with it. So you kind of put all these guys out and load them up. After you've loaded them up, you then roll on the weather table, and the weather table is crushingly difficult. You can roll 2d6. Oh my gosh, I rolled really well. I rolled a 3, which means all of this arrives. So then you convert all of these onto all of these tracks down here. You kind of fill them up and bump them up. Great. This never happened to us in our game. More likely than not, you're going to roll a 7 or more, right? That's the likeliest result, is kind of 7 or 8. In which case you're going to get 6 aborts. I think we had 9 and 10 at least twice, which was pretty crazy. So if you roll a 7, you're gonna roll 6 aborts on this table, and it means that there is a chance that 6 of these are gonna just not arrive because of the crappy weather. So 6 times, you just kind of got to mark it on a die. So the first roll, and this is D66. It is not a 2D6, so just remember that. So we're going to go black on the column, white, or black on the row, white on the column. So 6 and 2, we got 6 and 2 right here. This one doesn't arrive. So for roll number 2, we're going to go again. Oh, I almost rolled the same thing. So we're going to roll 66. So this one's not going to arrive. Great. Then we're going to roll again for our third abort. And we rolled 1 and 5. 1 and 5 is this one. This isn't going to arrive. So our fourth one, and you go through this, right? And it's, you know, it's a bit time consuming. We've got 2 and 5 is this one here. And then our fifth one, we rolled a 3 and 4, which is this one here. And then our last one, you do not get these cool dice. These are ours. 66, great. We already rolled that, so that's a blank. Nothing happens again. So we just lost a bunch of ammunition and fuel and spares, which isn't great. But we got lots of food through and a bit of ammo and a bit of this. And that was just an average amount of aborts. You might have foul weather, in which case basically nothing shows up. Or you might have 9 aborts, which we had regularly, and more of them don't show up. Again, later in the game, once these dig zones are here, you can't put stuff here, or they're going to try to remove those. If it's rain and monsoon, you literally can't fill these up, so you have fewer options available to you. Once the fuel shortage kicks in, you're going to get positive modifiers to this number, so you're more likely to roll an this 9 aborts or the foul weather. Again, as the game progresses, gets more and more challenging. And you might have only put 1 or 2 medicine and 1 replacements in, and if those are the ones that don't get through, and those are the things you need, you're in real trouble. And it's just this little kind of micro game, and it might seem a little bit silly, but it is so fun because there's all these considerations about how much you use these things, when you do that, what is available to you. So, you have to spend medicine to recover guys. You have to spend medicine to, from this wounded box to get them back out. But if you don't have the medicine, you can't do it. So you desperately want the medicine. But if you fill everything up with medicine, because it's more likely it'll get through now, you don't have as much ammo available to you, right? You don't have as much food and bullets. It's so wonderful. And all the time you're still fighting all this war game. And this just informs maybe what your focuses are and things like that. It's very, very, very cool. But other than that, you're going to resolve all that, bump up all these, then you're going to flip to the French side. They're going to do some moves. They're going to do some bombards. The Viet Minh are going to do their defensive fire, which isn't as good. They're going to then do a French assaults, and then French attrition, and French post-combat moves. And then we're going to kind of do this kind of dig resolution phase. And basically what the dig resolution phase is you can see we got this trench zone marker, and there's one in each of these big zones that are divided by these big red lines. There is a separate map which might be easier to see. It's kind of not. So we have this kind of red-yellow zone for the 316th, and this green zone for the 312th, and for the 308th, we've got this red zone that goes all the way around. And effectively what you're going to do is, this zone starts as entrenched. Once you clear out this base, you can move up. Your sappers abstractly start digging here. And you literally take this trench zone marker and you move it up to it's a dig zone. And once you clear out this zone, it becomes a trench zone. And then once you clear out this zone, you can move this up and it becomes a dig zone. And you're going to flip it over so it becomes a trench zone. And it's the progress of digging all of these tunnels and trenches. It's a siege, right? How many games do you actually do this? Oh, none that I've seen, but that's not true. The one game was, Fire and Stone Siege of Vienna had a tunneling mechanic that was cute, but this is much more involved than that. But basically, as you dig these in, if you're entrenched, better defensive modifiers, obviously, but also that hit and run thing that we talked about earlier, you have to retreat so that you become entrenched. well, if I'm up here, I got to retreat all the way back here. So we're digging the trench zones up so that I can hit and run from here. I can hit and run from here, which means it's quicker for me to launch my next rounds of attacks. And I'm doing that this way, I'm doing it this way, and I'm doing it all the way this way. And then on top of that, that's where we get to this trench zones. Once we have 8 trench/dig zones, and we start with 3, we're going to get 4, 5, 6, we're going to get 7, 8, 9, 10. Once we start getting all of these, that's when that geographical area shrinks for the French, and it's likely that a lot of these things that get airdrop supplies, they're going to land with the Viet Minh. The Viet Minh don't get anything for it. We effectively just deny it to the opponent, which is really nice, but that was something that I think was really cool. And again, it's that story over the course of a game. Now you can kind of see the trench zones on the board. So they alternate. So we have this dark zone here, and then we have this kind of faded zone here, and then it goes to another dark zone here, and it goes to a faded zone here. The problem is that when you have a bunch of counters on it, seeing exactly where that border is, you kind of got to concentrate. That's why they give you this, but it just takes a lot of getting used to of like, okay, this is this, and this is this, and this is this. So just know that. They gave you this play aid. At first it might seem like it's like, what the hell is this for? Once you start playing it, it's like, where's the trench zone? Again, where's the border for this trench zone with all my guys on it? I can tell where it is because I've played it, but, they give you the little helpful play aid. I know that wasn't necessarily the most detailed explanation, but I hope that gave you like a feel for the course of what this is. Everything you do is pretty involved, like even resolving a combat. Again, you've got your little combat number, and you're going to add to that a certain number of modifiers, and the modifiers are different for defensive fire versus assault fire. They're different for French versus Viet Minh assault fire and defensive fire. So there's lots of things to consider. You get all your modifiers, then you're going to roll 2d6 against that modified number, and you're trying to roll, I think you're trying to roll much, much lower. This was a not good roll. And again, you're then, so you got the modifiers, you roll 2d6, and if it's like below the number you were looking for, you get a +1 DRM. If it's 5 or more below, +2 DRM. That's really good. But if you roll above or really far above, it's negative DRMs. Then, so you're trying to roll below a modified high target number on this. Then, with 2d6, then to resolve the combat, you're trying to roll high against a modified morale value that you're trying to get the morale value low, so it's easier to roll high above it. In this one, you're trying to hit a target number on a CRT. You're not trying to hit like a differential number. It's a lot of mixed mechanics, which slows the game down as you have to shift between everything you're doing, the way that you're trying to approach it and think about it. And so just that's one of the real struggles with the game. But what it does on the board is wonderful. So that was an incredibly long explanation. I hope that was helpful. What we'll do is we'll wrap up here with a few final thoughts. So that was the board and how it works. I'm very grateful that we were able to, as part of our Shelf of Shame dust-off, play this and finally experience some of this. It was wonderful.
I understand why people talk about it so fondly.
Yeah.
It was very interesting, very unique. Would love to play it more.
It's not a game for the faint of heart, that's for sure. But it is a game that if you wanted to, like you said, you can set this up solo and you can learn it at your own pace and you will have a wonderful time with it. And then you find someone to play it with, and I think a lot of wargamers will be happy to play this with you.
This is the best game I've ever played on Dien Bien Phu.
That is a factual statement.
I've never played another game on Dien Bien Phu. There are other games on Dien Bien Phu.
Yeah, I think
there's one from White Dog Games that's it's a solo game.
Yeah.
And I've wanted to, I can't remember what it's called, but I've wanted to get that one for a while.
Is it an older one or?
Yeah, I would say it's 5 years ago.
Okay.
But it's all about the supply, and it just looks really cool.
Yeah, then there's Storm Over Dien Bien Phu, part of that Storm Over series.
Don't we have that one? I thought we got that one.
That sounds like something I would have done.
So that's another one we can play eventually.
It's right behind
Yeah,
you.
I knew it was.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll get that solo game, and then we can say we played 3 Dien Bien Phu games. So, but I did enjoy what this was trying to do. I enjoyed the thesis of it. I enjoyed the historical integration of what was going on. Couple of things I had trouble with. The trench zones on the map just, to me, don't stand out clearly.
Yeah, they even give you this.
Yep.
But like doing this
It's hard.
is hard.
So I struggled with that. But
Yeah.
now that we've played a little bit, I don't feel like I'm as concerned about it. Like, here's a zone, and here's a zone. That's basically.
Yeah, so those are the sectors, and within those, it's like light, dark, and it's okay. Some of it is like,
like 1 or 2 hexes.
like these, but it's okay. The setup chart was kind of a bear.
Well,
at
it was
first.
a bear because the colors are all so very similar. There'll be like a shade of gray with a red and a yellow line underneath it. And then there's a little darker shade of gray with a green and a red line on it. And it's like, that was really similar.
Or you're looking at the little designations, which are written so small. You know, it's very squinty. But then the other part is there's 4 different scenarios. And so that's one thing you could do. If you don't want it to be 21 hours long,
Pick a shorter.
you can play the D scenario, which is just that last monsoon season, which might be interesting to do, where it's like...
It would be a different part of the game.
The French are just in dire straits, and it's like, try to not die.
And I did like how they enumerated the scenario or letter on the board. Like all of these tracks, if you do scenario D, you're on 3. Scenario D, you're on 12. And that was cool. I thought that was very well done. And once we realized something like here, D, C, and B.
Yeah, those are where those trench zones
That's where the trench zones start. So it's done very well.
But the unit setup, I did not like.
Sure.
Because after you start putting the guys on the board, you have to put more on the board, and some of those go into places you've already covered up with units.
Yes. So you're looking for, where's C7 again? Oh, I've already got 3 units on the board.
And then, like, it's all done with these letter and number designations, like, there's like D5 and D6 and D7.
And then there's one that's...
And they're kind of nebulous.
Yeah.
And so it's not... And so it's sometimes it's kind of like, oh, where's this one again?
And then there's like A outpost, and some of them are not quite as easy to find. That's just a little quibble.
And then some of them have like letter designations which correspond to strong points, and you just put them anywhere within that. But like, it's just getting it set up was a bit of a pain. Mm-hmm. Once it was set up, though, you're good to go. But yeah.
Well, and I actually learned a lot about the game as I was setting it up, because I was really paying attention to all these notes on the board, and I was kind of learning the rules as I was doing it, which is kind of interesting.
That is one note. There is a ton of information on the board.
There are little notes everywhere that remind you how, you do this, and like, here's the rats of Nuam.
When we're worried about the food and bullets during the supply phase, remember,
reduce it by 3.
These little rules here, which that's going to help get some of that rules overload out of the way, because it's always there in front of you for a lot of it.
Well, and then the bombard charts are here on each side. I mean, obviously you're supposed to be sitting over there, and the French over here. So it's all set up to do that. It makes it very player friendly. So that was well done. Player aid was well done. Some of the rules were just, I think they needed some more clarity. Now, maybe the living rules clarify those.
I would have to presume that they do.
But this is a 2nd edition copy. I should be able to play this out of the box.
I agree.
And I think that was our
and maybe,
effort here.
But that's what we always do. Like, I believe, and I don't think this is outrageous, that a game should be playable with the rules out of the box. I understand why we have living rules.
In dreamland, don't you?
I know why we have errata sheets and stuff, but like, so more often than not, we play with the rules straight as is, so that I can give that level of an informed opinion of like, these rules are good, or these rules aren't good, or they're okay, and there's this, that, and this. This one, there was some times where it was like, I think the bombard rules might not be right in here, but I have to check those against the living rules to kind of see what they say.
Well, and now maybe we download the living rules and put them in the box the next time we play.
And I would do that for a second play, because hopefully they're just maybe worded a bit easier as well sometimes.
But I'm very glad we played this. This is one of the games on our Shelf of Shame dust off that we wanted to do. This is the March game, right? And we're doing it here on the 29th of March. So it is
we played at the very end of March.
literally the last couple of days. But we're successful. This is our third game.
Yes.
And we've played one every month. So I'm very proud of us. We have 9 other games to go. And 9 more months. Hopefully we get through that.
Yeah, we've done Ardennes 44, we've done Baptism of Fire, and now we've done Dien Bien Phu.
Yep.
And
next month, I think, is Chariots of...
Brazen Chariots.
Brazen Chariots.
Yeah.
So
another BCS game.
Another BCS
that
game.
should be a bit of an easy pickup because we just played
we know the
Baptism of
rules,
Fire. Oh, and I got the new,
The new what?
the little HQ unit.
Oh, we got the
sheets.
cards, Yeah, pretty cool.
But yeah, the event's been really fun. It's been a way to get some of these games. And we're going to play them all. But even if we didn't, and we'd only played these 3, I would count
would've
it
been
as a
worth it,
success
sure.
because they've all been really good so
And
far.
ultimately, we may only get 8 or 9 of them played. I mean, you just never know, right?
Sure.
We're going to try, but you know what? Next year, we'll just pick another 12.
Yes.
And the year after, we're going to pick another 12. And I'm very excited about it.
Yeah.
I've already started thinking about some of the other games on my shelf and even some games on your shelf that we want to play. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. But yeah, Dien Bien Phu, The Final Gamble, designed
Very
by
good
Kim
game.
Kanger from Legion Wargames. Yeah, not for the faint of heart, but again, pick it up. You can solo it and just kind of fiddle around at your own pace. So you can get it 2-player, have someone teach it to you. Really, really interesting, deep, rich game.
Very enjoyable.
So appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander for theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.